The Baltimore Ravens made a big pre-draft move on Wednesday, extending Rashod Bateman through 2026. We talk about if it's the right move for the Ravens. Also, we dive into official draft day predictions, all here on a draft day episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, as always, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on draft day and making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day, free and available all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your show. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and to the show for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We have a lot coming your way throughout draft weekend. 3 days of live shows, 3 days of regular shows. We got it all here for you. Ravens news, all the draft news here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit I do have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. It is draft day. We made it. The Ravens picking 30th. Going to be an exciting night, an exciting weekend for the Ravens. Here with me is our Taco Thursday guest, former Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, seems like the Ravens love making these like draft day, before draft day moves. Last year, obviously, Lamar Jackson gets his deal the literal day of the draft. The Ravens decide to push it back a day and have it the day before the draft. The big news of Wednesday being Rashod Bateman being extended through 2026. So first of all, happy draft day. How you feeling about everything that's been going on this week?
Man, I tell you what, I am just jacked out of my mind for a lot of reasons, both personally as well as professionally. Professionally speaking, you're talking about an opportunity to, I think, after last year's AFC Championship loss, I think that the way the reshuffling of the coaching staff, the free agency of players that we thought were going to be some good foundational players, they're gone. But this is an opportunity to get some really good quality depth of players and, add to what the legacy of Lamar Jackson is going to be here in Baltimore. I think there's excitement in the air. And then personally, my son, he is going to have an opportunity potentially to be an undrafted rookie free agent. We'll see how that all unfolds. But, professionally, personally, I'm excited.
Yeah, and you know, Q, you and your son have my full support, and the community here on Locked On Ravens has your full support, and your family here as well. So looking forward to seeing how that unfolds for you. But how it unfolded, how things unfolded for the Ravens yesterday. Just a crazy world. We've been going back and forth, Q, you and I breaking news to each other. Last week, it was you breaking the J.K. Dobbins news to me. This week, I was breaking the Rashod Bateman news to you. We're kind of going all over the place with that. But the Ravens extending Rashod Bateman again through 2026. And it's a move we're starting to hear rumblings and not necessarily anything substantial, but hey, what's the long-term future of Rashod Bateman? Is there a potential trade on the way? And look, last time we were kind of discussing something like this, no one knew that Marquise Brown was getting traded on draft night. Everybody had their lips sealed. And by the time it happened, I think everybody was dumbfounded. But of course, that's no longer happening. How surprised were you that this happened now? Obviously, the fifth-year option was a topic of the conversation. That's coming up soon, but that no longer means anything at this point.
Well, the weird thing, I think, this is the first time that a Ravens first-round receiver actually was offered a second contract in Ravens history. So I think if you look at, Ozzie and obviously now EDC, for them, you got to really do something to gain a second contract. We've seen them do it countless number of times over on the defensive side of the football. We've seen them do it strategically, offensively, going all the way back to, guys like Todd Heap, and, you would see a guy like clearly a Joe Flacco, or, just different people along the way, a Marshall Yanda. Big time last year was Lamar Jackson. But for a wide receiver to get his second contract, I think that says an awful lot about what the Ravens feel about Rashod Bateman, because as you said, draft day has been this kind of what's going on here? And that what's going on was either Hayden Hurst, being accommodated and let go of, but Hollywood Brown was the big one that I think both you and I were like, wow, that's crazy. But as it came out, it was just his feeling of not really vibing in the Greg Roman offense. And they were like, yeah, we understand. We're going to accommodate you. I think for Rashod Bateman last year, it was him being salty as all salty can be and striking out or lashing out at Eric DaCosta and them from a combine aspect of things that kind of led to like a, well, where are you discord? So that's why I feel this is both good. Wow, cool, awesome. And like, woo, I wonder how those fences got mended to allow this contract to take place.
And there are multiple other factors too. And all those things you said, Q, 100% I agree, where there was some conversation. I mean, I think a lot of people remember that tweet that was put out, and Eric DaCosta has said, it's all good. It's all good. But you never really know. But I mean, look, if this happened, I guess it really was all good. But the other factors here, the actual length and total money of the contract is one. Now, at the time of this recording, we don't know those numbers right now. They haven't been released. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, they have been. There have been some numbers floated, like 3 for $15 million total. That seems a little low to me, if we're being honest. Bateman's fifth-year option was 13.2, and if you're watching on video, you see Q's reaction. I think he agrees with me in terms of that being a little low. So we're still waiting on those official numbers. If it's a team-friendly deal, one that's fair for the player, fair for the team, I think he can say, look, you're not overpaying him. You're not doing this. That's fine. But then the other part is the role. The Ravens have clearly, they made it clear this offseason that they are going to trust Rashod Bateman in the number 2 role. The extension certainly solidifies that. But then bringing in guys like Michael Gallup and Josh Reynolds for visits, them signing Deontay Hardy, those were never players that were going to challenge Rashod Bateman for his number 2 job. Last year, Odell and Rashod were kind of flip-flopping a little bit. Who's number 2, who's number 3, what's going on here, what's going on there. Bateman doesn't have to look behind anybody's shoulder. But Q, do you feel comfortable enough in Rashod Bateman? And we're on draft day here, so maybe the Ravens take another guy. But right now, as the receiver room stands, do you feel comfortable with Bateman in that role, knowing he's in Baltimore long-term now?
100%. He's a first-round guy. He's a first-round talent. He's a guy that, just as much as everybody was on the hype train of Zay Flowers, yeah, I'm. Me. We spoke big time his rookie year. Keep on going back to that one because that's when I thought he stood up and was like, hey, this is what a number 1 receiver does. When it's press coverage, man-to-man, everybody else is covered. We got to go. What are you going to do? It's on the road. He delivered in a division game against the Cleveland Browns, and they had some really good corners. Now, with that said, sure, people can, clap back at me and be like, yo, bro, what happened with the Pittsburgh game? Because, okay, he failed. He failed miserably. But I think it was a growing experience for him. I think that the mindset of Rashod Bateman and the Ravens for this is that with Todd Monken's offense, another year under the belt, he's going to be just fine. And I think the depth is going to be just fine for the Baltimore Ravens.
And that's the other thing, too, because you look at Baltimore's receiving room right now, it is Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Tyler Wallace, Deontay Hardy. That's 5 guys right there. The draft is coming up, Q. It is literally today, so we are going to see those moves made. Baltimore picking at 30, but at this point, there is still – we were talking about the Ravens adding a wide receiver even before these trade rumblings and rumors and what have you started. I don't think it necessarily, Bateman being in Baltimore long-term does maybe knock the need down a little bit, but I don't think it eliminates it the way some people are talking about. Yes, offensive line is the much bigger need now. I think, there's been no question about that for a while. Maybe even a defensive need jumps up, but would you be shocked if Baltimore, even with Bateman under contract, took a wide receiver at 30 or took a wide receiver maybe on day 2 in the 2nd or 3rd round early?
3rd round is probably the highest. I would be like, okay. Anything after that, like, nah, because all the big boys are going to be off the board anyway. The Marvin Harrisons, the Neighbors, the one kid, was it Keon Coleman from Florida State? All those guys, they're going to be off the board. I know there's big-time depth at the wide receiver position, but I think the need of, whether it be a Mims or Graham from Duke, some offensive lineman, a big stud. That to me seems like a logical choice. But receiver-wise, I think it would be a reach, I think, to go ahead and get a receiver that high.
Well, yeah, I'll out myself a little bit here, Q. I did that Bleacher Report live stream mock draft, and I knew the Ravens extended Rashod Bateman, and I still took Xavier Legette at 30. I still did it. Would that be your reaction?
I'm not tripping because I know you do your homework and I know you do your due diligence. So that's not the question. But I think if you look at it, like you got Nelly, you got Tyler Wallace, you got like tight ends, so you got weapons. From a young guy perspective, like there's a development process that goes on with some, the young crop of rookies that they're going to bring in. But that offensive line, that was the big boy need. And we saw down the stretch, this is a playoff ready team, but down the stretch, they couldn't play ugly ball against the Kansas City Chiefs. We want them to play ugly ball against the Kansas City Chiefs at home again and win it this time. Young receiver, ain't going to get it done.
And I said it, well, admittedly, the reason I did it was because I didn't really love any of the offensive linemen left. And I'm like, oh, do I really want to reach for this guy? I know the Ravens are a BPA team. But again, I agree with you. Offensive line by far now, and it always kind of has been, the biggest need. And to me, I said on the stream, the only way this works, if they draft a receiver in the first round, you have to commit more to the passing game and being a more balanced offense. Now, signing Derrick Henry, it's not really a step in the balanced offense direction. Obviously, that's a stud running back. You're going to run the football with them. But to me, I think more so realistically, I would expect them to take a wide receiver on day 2. I could see them taking an offensive lineman. I could see them taking a corner, maybe another guy at 30. But then day 2, I think there are enough quality receivers still where they could definitely add somebody there. And coming up, we're going to be talking more about Rashod Bateman, finishing up our conversation there, and then getting into some draft day updates. I think it's lost in this whole Bateman conversation. It is draft day, so stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I have a competitive side and I'm a competitive person, which it is definitely true. I do have that competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you can play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that'll bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself, and the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves you. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in on the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs, slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown. Make your first bet an automatic win. I hope the Nuggets, again, get some more automatic wins these playoffs. I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy. Crazy game 2 against the Lakers. I don't know if they're going to get the sweep. I hope they win the series. Again, it's only 2-0. Lakers can come back, but I'm hoping for some Nuggets automatic wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown. Again, make your first bet that automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail, who was not a fan of my Xavier Legette pick in the Bleacher Report mock draft, but it's okay. We move, and part of the reason why draft day is so exciting, Q, is because you can evaluate the roster before and after. We're certainly going to do that next week and kind of take a snapshot. So let's take a snapshot right now of where the roster is, and we'll revisit this next week. As the roster stands right now, how confident are you in the positions they have, the depth they have, and that they can make a repeat run with just the roster at this very moment?
It would have to depend upon a couple of guys that we have question marks around, which is Faalele and Voorhees. I think if you run the ball with thunder and lightning, and you have the tight ends that they have on the roster, like it's going to be easy for Zay, it's going to be easy for Bate, it's going to be easy for Nelly, and that's not a reach at all because you're going to have to pay attention to Derrick Henry. Last I checked, Mark Andrews played in the AFC Championship game. Last I checked, this is going to be the second year of Todd Monken's offense. Last I checked, Isaiah Likely, when our guy Mark was out, was straight up balling. So defensively, Zach Orr, I'm a little bit like, okay, Are you outside the box thinker, similar to what we saw in Mike McDonald? Guys were just marveling over the way Mike would kind of be, sitting there just still constantly going over stuff and going over stuff and going over stuff to the point where he would come up and give you little nuggets of information via practice, via right before the game, making those halftime adjustments, all those things. How's Zach Orr going to be able to touch those guys? How's he going to be able to motivate players to bring the best out of them? Those are my questions, but I think this is a playoff-ready team.
Right, and it's the young guys. I mean, you mentioned Falele, Voorhees, maybe even like a Ben Cleveland who's entering year 4. Is he finally going to take over one of these starting jobs and be consistent? I mean, edge rusher Q, we talked about it. Adafe always, this is the pure breakout season. David Ajabo, is he going to step up in a big way? Some of these young corners, I mean, maybe what would be great, Q, honestly, is if we saw some level of contribution consistently from either a Jalen Armour-Davis or Pepe Williams this year. Those guys have been kind of afterthoughts. But look, if you can get that, it would help a world's difference in the cornerback room. So it is. Right now, it's about the young players. They're going to be adding some more young players on draft day. And again, one of the guys we've been talking about, Rashod Bateman, is another one of these guys who we've seen the flashes, we've seen the potential, we've seen him had some production here and there, but can he be that consistent player? So let's round out that conversation quickly, then we'll go full on draft mode. In your opinion, what do you need to see from Rashod Bateman this season? That it doesn't have to be a perfect season, doesn't have to be 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, but what do you need to see from him to at least give you the confidence that, hey, you know what? This is growth, and he's getting there.
The deep ball was the big elephant in the room with him and Lamar, and I think Lamar's, the way he throws his ball compared to other quarterbacks with a higher arc, Rashod is either A, going to have a great conversation with Lamar. Lamar is going to, adjust, or B, Lamar is going to be, hey, I'm the 2-time MVP. You got to get on the same page with me, and he's going to do that. And I think it's a deep ball. I really do. I think it's the explosiveness down the football field of both of them connecting, being able to have that sixth sense for one another. That leads to it's what is it, 17 games? I mean, you're looking at an easy 1,100 yard season. You don't need 100 yards every single game to check that box. Give me that 70-yard, but also sprinkle in a 20 to 25 plus, which is indicative of a big play down the football field in NFL statistics. So for Rashod, for him to look the part, touchdowns, red zone, all that, but the big play, in my opinion, because of the separation he creates from defenders, that I think is the one that I look forward to. I want to see, also another, who was it? He went against the Miami Dolphins at home 2 seasons ago when he took a man-to-man slant route. Say again?
Xavier Howard.
Yes, Xavier Howard. Took it to the house on it, bro. That was awesome. And I think that kind of is the excitement that we can see on a consistent basis, sprinkle in some deep balls. Woo, we cooking.
Right. And I think, for me, it's Bateman. I've been a Bateman believer. I loved his tape in Minnesota. The route running is pure. You talked about that slant he took, and that was, he's been frying people on these routes, but it's about getting the connection with Lamar. This is a huge season for Rashod Bateman. It might not be make or break anymore in terms of, is he going to stay in Baltimore? What's his long-term future look like? Because he's under contract now. But in terms of just, all right, after 4 years, you get a little bit of an idea. And look, I'm not saying players can't get better after year 4. If you sold every single player short after year 4, you'd be making a big mistake. But this, to me, is a huge, massive year. So I think that extending Rashod Bateman for the right price here, if this is a team-friendly deal that also is fair to Rashod Bateman, 100% I think is the right move. But the role, look, I would love for Baltimore to go out there and get a Cortland Sutton, get one of these other veterans that have proven it, bigger bodied player. But again, we were talking about all that with Rashod Bateman still on the roster. It's the veteran and Rashod Bateman. It's just recently we were talking about, what if you traded Rashod Bateman for Brandon Ayuk? What if you traded Rashod Bateman for Cortland Sutton? That's not happening. It's maybe down the line, but not right now. So I think that the Ravens, it was the right decision for the money if it's team friendly. The role, though, I understand if some people are a little skittish about, well, he hasn't been consistent. But you know what? Sometimes belief can do a whole heck of a lot for a player, can it, Q? Believing in a guy, extending a guy and saying, you know what, we're going to place our full belief in you, because maybe Bateman was feeling like, I don't really know about my long-term future. The 50. Sometimes it's just, there's a mental aspect to this game, Q. I mean, you know it. Sometimes it can get a little bit dicey. And plus for Baltimore, we have to remember what happened last offseason. The Ravens declined Patrick Queen's fifth-year option. I'm sure they wish they did not do that at this point in time to have him on that contract. The wide receiver market is ever so increasing. And maybe the Ravens like, you know what, if we can get Bateman for maybe under what that fifth-year option is yearly for a yearly salary, might be the right move. So maybe Baltimore had some remorse about how that decision went last offseason and said, we're going to get ahead of it this offseason before the hopeful breakout happens.
So, it's interesting because it's off-season is the business side of football. The season is the play of football. Love the game and, the intricacies of it. And they both are, yin and yang. You can't do one without the other. Professional football at its finest. But there is that, as you just perfectly said, that, hey, we believe in you. Okay, how do you believe in me? Give me money. You really believe in me when you're giving me money. Because now there's a business investment of you. Lamar Jackson was clear as day. His mom and him, they were like, look, we want to be loved. Show us the money. Show us the money. We know we're loved. We're going to be all set. So I think for Rashod, the fact that they extended him, the fact that, it wasn't, Patrick Queen, you can say what you will. There was some early year issues and him, getting benched and, at the Commanders game and during COVID and all that. And, was the game too big for him? But I believe Roquan Smith, like literally a high tide raises all ships, as I say about him. He for sure like hooked it up from a aspect of helping out mentally for Patrick Queen. I think for Rashod Bateman, we saw that he can do what he needs to do. It's about your meaning John Harbaugh, your meaning Eric DaCosta, belief in him. And the only way you're going to show him is show me the money. They did. We'll see what the numbers look like to see how much they love him. But at the same time, rest assured, you got a deal done. And I think that's a good thing.
And I think, I think it's easy to say that, there's been very inconsistent production and that means he's never going to be good. Well, I'm not going that route. I'm saying that, look, sure, you can say it's a risk. They're putting this trust in him, but sometimes a risk is necessary to get a player jump started. And that belief, as I talked about, it can go a long way. So there is a risk in this move. I'm not saying there's no risk at all, but Baltimore's been a team that does like to believe in their own guys. If it is right, it feels like all those bridges have been amended, as you talked about earlier, Q. So we're going to see how it pays off for him. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We've seen the potential. We're going to see how it pans out. Coming up, though, we're going to go full draft mode because, again, believe it or not, there is a draft today, even though we're talking about this big Bateman news. So stay tuned. We'll talk about positions of need, potential prospects, and final draft predictions. All that coming up next here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I've had a lot of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's networking, finding connections, or looking for jobs. LinkedIn's been great. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. Might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Plus, LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back. Rounding out Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail talking to you on this draft day. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel here, like the video as well. It helps out a ton. Also in audio form, be sure to follow along there, subscribe over there as well, anywhere you get your podcast. Really appreciate the community we've built here on YouTube in audio form, obviously social media, subtext, the whole 9 yards. Q, it's a big draft for the Ravens. It's ever so important, as we've talked about. Baltimore hits on their draft picks in a post-rookie contract Lamar Jackson world. Even those mid-rounders, as Baltimore has been so good at seemingly finding one or two gems every single season, they have 9 picks this year, but the big one is at 30. We talked about the shifting of needs with Rashod Bateman and even Kyle Van Noy, if you want to go back that far a couple weeks ago. But offensive line is the big one. Would you be disappointed if the Ravens didn't take an offensive lineman at 30?
Yeah, I'd be very disappointed. I think so. The draft every single year, they're this group, whatever the group is, that is a depth group. This year, it is offensive line. There are talks that the receiver group is a deep group, but primarily offensive line. So you might get a run on other groups that aren't as deep because you want to make sure that you get your guy. Everybody else is going to be like, we'll wait. Offensive lineman, we don't need them just yet. There's plenty of guys, blah, blah, blah. The value of it all. Some teams are going to be trading the whole 9 yards that you and I, as of this recording, we don't know. But with that said, I think for the Ravens, offensive line is just staring at you, and you trying to say to your guy Ronnie Stanley, look, we love you, but we got to do what's best for us. Obviously, you had other guys like Morgan Moses and John Simpson. They're no longer in the building, so you got to replenish that offensive line. And Todd Monken, he recognizes he's got a guy that can run the ball and be a physical dominant runner. He's got, he's probably going to get another running back. He's going to get, 2 other running backs that are already on the roster that is going to be good. Like, it all spells offensive line.
Right. And to that point, this is a very deep offensive line class, especially in the first round when you're talking about maybe 6 to 8 guys potentially. But a follow-up, Q, is at this point, the Ravens know they're in their window. We know the Ravens are in their window. Lamar Jackson's prime is here. There are a couple of really talented first-round offensive linemen that have all-pro, multiple seasons, 10-year plus Pro Bowl ceilings. Now, they're still really good players right now, but they might need a little bit of work with their run blocking. Some of them might need a little work with their pass sets. Umarus Mims is one of the guys from Georgia who comes to mind of a player who didn't have a lot of starting experience at Georgia. He's everything you want in terms of athleticism, size, strength, but he was injured for a lot of last season, didn't get that experience. A lot of people don't expect him to fall to 30 just based off that potential alone. But if you're Baltimore, can you justify taking a player that might not be ready right now? Are you valuing potential in the early rounds of the Ravens, or are you valuing maybe a guy who has a higher floor but not as high of a ceiling?
Yeah, I remember Zeus was another guy who they were like, because his combine was just horrible. And when he got into camp, he looked like meh. But he turned on, he flourished. He just went out there, did what he needed to do. And obviously Lamar had his MVP season. Running the football was just as dominant can be. And a lot of it had to do with Zeus just holding it down and being versatile. As a matter of fact, he moved over to left tackle after Ronnie Stanley went down from an injury and held up well again, put himself in, great, strong position. With that said, though, I think if you look at Mims, he kind of has that big body awesomeness to him. I think the fact that, there's a Todd Monken factor in there from, his Georgia roots, all of it. I think it's a good development, but I think that development could be trial by fire. Throw him in there. Let him go ahead and see if he can handle it. And plus, you're going to have other young players on a roster that are going to be sitting there, and they're going to be trying to push him. I think this is all good if we get Umarus Mims.
I think Mims would be awesome. And to me, there is a difference between taking major prospects in terms of just project players in general versus major prospects who have been there. They do have some experience. Mims is someone that does have some experience. It's not like he has had nothing. So to me, I think that risk versus reward, I'm taking a flyer because you can plug and play him. It's not like he has to sit for anybody behind a year or anything like that. Sure, there might be some growing pains here or there, but the draft queue, we know it's not just for next season. You got to look 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead, 4 years ahead, 5 years. And that's how the Ravens do this, especially with BPA. We know the Ravens are a BPA team. We've seen it with Kyle Hamilton. We've seen it with Marlon Humphrey. We've seen it with the list goes on and on and on. I expect the Ravens to maybe do a couple of surprising picks in this draft positionally. I think they're going to take a defensive lineman at some point. They love taking defensive linemen. I think they had a streak of like multiple years of taking a defensive lineman until a year recently. Eric DeCosta said running back is a position, as you mentioned earlier. That's one. So they were never going to take 5 offensive linemen or 5 wide receivers. This is going to be a spread out draft, but that doesn't mean they're going to take a quarterback like a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix. They have their quarterback. They have their tight ends. Those are the positions I'd be a little bit surprised at, but I'm going to take you back, Q. I'm going to take you back about a month, maybe a little longer than that. I put out a mock draft, and we talked about this, and you commented on one of my mock drafts because in the 200s, I took a quarterback, Mr. Joe Milton, and you said, hold on a second now. What's this? What the Ravens? What's this? Tyler Huntley's since gone to Cleveland. Josh Johnson's not necessarily a long-term answer, and they don't really know what they have in Malik Cunningham. I'll ask you the same thing. Would you be disappointed if the Ravens took a quarterback late to maybe solve their backup issue, or is that a pick that you'd be okay with?
Yeah, after looking more at it and recognizing that's kind of the model that we've seen with other franchises that have had franchise quarterbacks. The one that really comes to mind that did it well was Green Bay and Ron Wolf and what he did as a general manager with Brett Favre. You had a Mark Brunell, you had a Matt Hasselbeck, you had guys that were backups that wound up going other places and being, that franchise's quarterback and playing some amazing football. I think when you look at Joe Milton, like that dude, I guess, part of it is that, man, that dude got a sweet arm, just amazing. Like, is he really, like, what else do you not see in him that would make you think he is not that good enough to be that high or a higher draft pick? So that was part of my reason, because I was like, wait a minute, what are you thinking? But I will yield. And yes, I like that idea of if it is a developmental thing. Lamar is totally cool. He's chill. He don't need to worry about looking over his shoulder. He's more than worked well with Snoop, more than worked well with Josh Johnson. Like, he doesn't care. He's like, man, I'm a great teammate. Hey, I know who I am. I know what I can do. I don't need to worry about other guys. Matter of fact, let's help one another out. So I think that is my thinking as in current day. See how I did it right there? I changed it up like a lot of other mock drafts.
No, I wasn't questioning you or trying to say, oh, I got you. Because again, you actually with Milton, you made a good point there, because his arm is incredible. He has strength on strength on strength. Where it's lacking is the accuracy. He's been very all over the place with accuracy over the course of his career. So I think that even if it's not Milton, I just wouldn't be shocked if they did it. Now, one I would be shocked, even though the Ravens did lose Ben Mason. I don't think they're taking a fullback in the 5th round again. At least I would sure hope they didn't do anything like that. But edge rusher is another one that we had kind of talked about. We had definitely put it up there on our list pretty high until Kyle Van Noy was re-signed. Seems like Baltimore loves taking defensive players, Q, and it seems like Baltimore loves double dipping at certain positions. Do you see any positions like multiple offensive linemen, multiple corners, multiple edge guys, wide receivers? Do you think Baltimore double dips at all, or do you think they go pretty versatile and go one at each position?
Yeah, obviously, I think, what was it? The one double dip year was Kolar, my guy, and Isaiah Likely. I think you can see offensive line be double dipped and corner. I think those are two positions where you can never have enough corners. The great Ozzie Newsome said that, but I think at the same time, from the offensive line depth, there are guys that we don't even know. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, you can talk about whatever draft Bible that there are out there that really gets into detail, and that's great. But the Ravens are very unique in the way they present to their board, if you will, their top 100 board, and looking at different players. And I'm telling you, if they see like, good God, man, the board is staring right at us. All these other guys went on a run, and our guy, who we got ranked at, 50, is still there. Well, you better believe it. Like, if it's a double dip, they're going to double dip, and they're going to be fine with it.
Yeah, it's a BPA team, and they're not going to do it to an extreme extent in terms of double, triple, quadruple dipping at positions, which, I mean, sure, they've triple dipped at times, but it's been within the realm of this guy's just too high on our board. We cannot let him go again, because that's what they do. The reason the Ravens have been so consistent in terms of not a ton of losing seasons, not a ton of those like 3-14, 2-15 years, is because they draft BPA. And so when one guy leaves, and example, they trade Chuck Clark, who fills in there. Kyle Hamilton gets a full-time role. Brandon Carr ends up leaving. Who would they draft? Marlon Humphrey gets a full-time role. So it's those types of picks that can set up the Ravens not only for next year, but 7-10 years down the line if you get one of those blue chip prospects. But all right, Q, let's get into our final draft predictions here. We'll only do the first round, nothing too crazy. Now, some prospects I can see for Baltimore offensive line wise. I mean, Umarus Mims would be awesome. I don't know if he falls. It's possible. Maybe a Tyler Guyton. Jordan Morgan is someone who you could kick inside if you wanted to. That's from the West. That's a West Coast pick if you want to go there. There are a couple of others as well. Wide receiver, I know you're not a fan of the wide receivers in terms of with all this happening, but Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, some of those guys. Corners, Kool-Aid McKinstry could be an option. I'm not sure he'll still be there. Where do you think Baltimore goes? You said you'd be disappointed if it wasn't an offensive lineman. Is your prediction they go offensive line here?
Yeah, I think they will. I think at the same time, depending upon other teams, I know there's been a lot of talk with the Dallas Cowboys looking to draft an offensive lineman, kind of replenish what they've been lacking. But that's why I look at guys like like you said, Tyler Guyton, Umarus Mims. But shoot, if he's there, why not even Graham Barton? Duke guy, played multiple positions. Heck, you need, like a John Simpson plug and play. Versatility is king. And if you know that eventually he can move back out to the outside, he could be your next right tackle. Okay. He could be your left guard. Okay. Like that to me sounds like a Raven type of a pick, Graham Barton.
Yeah, I think, you would use him. You'd have to use him either on the interior at a guard spot. You could maybe kick him out to tackle as well. I know there's been rumblings about him at center recently, but again, if Baltimore to take him, it's about team fit, right? It's about where the Ravens, I mean, they don't need a center. Tyler Linderbaum is their guy. So I think that whether it's a Barton or Guyton or Morgan, wouldn't be shocked to see Baltimore take an offensive line. And one more point I do want to make here before I give mine is trading back potentially is still in play for them. Even trading up potentially is still in play. Although I think trading back obviously is the much more realistic route if we're being honest. But if there's a guy, and look, we saw the Ravens do this in 2018, Q. They traded up for Lamar Jackson, pick 32 to get that fifth-year option. If a Michael Penix Jr. is at 30, if Bo Nix is there at 30, and a team really likes that guy and they want a team to trade up with, and Eric Acosta says the board hasn't fallen the way we really wanted it to, let's trade back, reassess, get some extra draft capital. I could see that happening. Now, I don't really know what to do here because I was so dead set on Xavier Legette before this Bateman news happened. And I mean,
that's what happens. They just kind of switch it up on you.
They shift on me. I was going to go into the whole draft process last year. All right, who's the quarterback? How long are we doing this for? And then, of course, they signed Lamar the day of the draft. You know what? I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna say Xavier Legette's the pick at 30. I see your disappointment in me. I'll give a backup though. I think my backup is Tyler Guyton. I think Guyton would be a guy on the offensive line. Offensive line is a need. If the Ravens do this, if they take Xavier Legette, I wouldn't be shocked if their next two picks are offensive linemen. Maybe one guy And the reason I'm doing this too is because I know this tackle class is so deep. Now, it depends on the run that's going to happen. I'm sure there will be a run. But if you're Baltimore, what you want over the first 2 days is a lot of quarterbacks taken, a lot of tight ends taken, a lot of defensive linemen taken, a lot of safeties taken, a lot of inside linebackers taken, and some centers in there as well. If those guys go, it just pushes down your needs to you. So I'm going to go Xavier Legette with an offensive lineman in the second round as my pick. I just feel like Baltimore has been in on him for a while and they really like him. And plus, we were talking about all this, talking about first round receivers before the Bateman extension and with Bateman still on the roster. So this only works again if Baltimore were to go and be more committed to the passing game. I think they're going to be a little more balanced next year under Todd Monken. It's year 2 of the Monken offense, as you mentioned. So I know not a lot of people are I'm going to get roasted in the comments, but I'm going to stick true to, I think people are going to be Team Q on this one and not Team Kevin.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I appreciate the receiver love. I think that is a wonderful thing, but I'm trying to go to the Super Bowl, and I just don't see a receiver in this draft outside of, the top guys that are going to be gone, that are going to really be that big of an influence. And I think you got guys that are signed, not signed, Bateman, who are ready to step up and play.
Hey, I'm trying to go to the Super Bowl too, Q. I'm trying to go too, but I think that, you know what, if it's an offensive lineman in round 1 again, would not be mad at it. I think there are enough wide receivers on day 2, like a Jalen Polk or some of those guys that fit the prototype and the mold of what the Ravens need. So I think that you could go offensive line, wide receiver. You could go wide receiver, offensive line. I think either way, you could still be okay if you're Baltimore. Q, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on. Crazy weekend ahead for all of us. I know. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, man, it's mentaltraining.com that you can go to my website, check out my training and my training understanding philosophy. It is all about 7 is my youngest, all the way on up to my oldest is 84. Doesn't matter if you play a sport, if you're just looking for longevity and a good health. At the same time, you can also find me this coming Sunday on WJZ as we go live for our Purple Playbook show and kind of kick it around and talk post-draft analysis and see why my guy, Kevin Ostreicher, has been off a little bit, but that's okay. Kevin Ostreicher, we love you. So at the same time, we love him so much that, Locked On Ravens, that's where you're going to find me chopping it up, talking football, all things Ravens with my guy.
That's right. It's been a crazy week. I know, Q, for you as well, alongside me here. Technical difficulties going on all these different shows. So once this is over, we're going to come back. We're going to break it all down here on Locked On Ravens. And, of course, be sure to check out all of Q's work in the description below. Check out his website. Follow along with him anywhere you can find him. He does really great work. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be right back here later tonight after the draft. We'll be doing a live stream talking about what the Ravens did at 30. Did they pick? Did they move up? Did they move back? We'll talk about that all and a lot more. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here later tonight on Locked On Ravens.